Why is Fraud So Common by Professor Nigel MacLennan. What makes fraud, corruption, false reporting, and willful misgovernance so prevalent? Why does it happen even when there are so-called preventative measures in place? Fraud and corruption, mismanagement and misgovernance are omnipresent challenges in all organizations, regardless of size, industry, or location. Here are just some of the key contributors organized into categories. Individual factors, motivations, greed, desire for power, financial pressure, or ethical lapses can drive individuals to commit fraud, corruption, and worse. Speak to any fraud detective and they will tell you this. To figure out what went on and why, you only need to look at three motives. Follow the desire for power, follow the desire for money, follow the desire for sex. Sometimes all three motives are involved. Opportunity. Wrongdoers always need opportunities to thrive. Inadequate internal controls, weak oversight, and lax enforcement of policies create the ideal opportunity for all sorts of nefarious activity and misconduct. If the oversight is absent and yet no crime has been detected, worry not. When you look at the weakest points, areas of scrutiny failure, you can be nearly certain to uncover some hidden naughtiness. Method. Almost always, the means chosen by wrongdoers to exploit the failures of oversight that have been presented to them are based on the specific natures of the failures of oversight. Motive and opportunity shape the chosen method. Rationalization. Almost all organizational wrongdoers will have rationalizations and justifications for committing their crimes. People with the greatest potential for crime are typically those who, when challenged about their conduct, always have someone or something to blame. No problem is ever their fault. Gaslighting is a precursor to crime. Such self-perceived angels are almost always the real devils. Rational, measured, balanced people look to themselves first and are quick to put right any problems they have caused. Neophyte wrongdoers are the opposite. Their crimes are sparked in their minds, and through rationalization, they soon become an inferno. High-functioning mental disorders. Psychopaths, narcissists, sociopaths, and Machiavellians are the prime suspects in any organizational wrongdoing. They typically have their focus on me, me, me. Any casualties of their crimes are of no concern to them, and anyone and everyone who exposes them has to be destroyed. It will come as no surprise that since so many psychopaths are in positions of leadership, almost all organizational wrongdoing starts at or is exemplified at the top. The Italian wisdom applies. The fish rots from the head. Organizational factors. Culture. There seem to be at least three interconnected contributory elements of culture that facilitate nefarious activity. A culture that is tolerant of unethical behavior is a breeding ground for wrongdoing. When short-term gains are prioritized over long-term integrity, corruption is inevitable. If a culture is toxic and psychologically unsafe, the normal balances of internal whistleblowing are removed, often literally. That opens the door to organizational wrongdoers being able to operate without fear of exposure. It is one of the main reasons that whistleblowers are systematically destroyed by misappropriation of organizational resources, hiring lawyers who are knowingly happy to defend the indefensible, of course for a suitable fee, paid for by the funds misappropriated by the wrongdoers. Cultural duplicity. For example, when open, honest, and transparent communication is espoused, but the exact opposite is enacted, the tight control of information, the creation of spin and misinformation fosters and normalizes dishonesty. A culture of duplicity makes corruption inevitable. The journey starts with an expedient withholding of information, then escalates to providing a spin on things that go wrong. Emboldened by the effectiveness of the low-level duplicity, the sense of we can get away with anything develops to the point of the scandals that you read every day in the media. Leadership example. Anyone who has even the remotest idea of what it takes to lead knows that trust and integrity are the backbone of leadership. Leadership is a goldfish bowl role. Leaders are under scrutiny by staff 24/7, 365. Each time trust is breached and integrity has gone AWOL, a leadership example is set. Preach ethics, do not practice them. When such behavior goes unchallenged and the ethically toxic leaders are never held to account, another example is set. Unethical behavior of the kind exhibited by your leaders is condoned or tacitly accepted, therefore you should copy it. Accountability vacuum. When leaders have been caught with their pants down, figuratively or literally, and they are not held to account, they are emboldened. More serious wrongdoing inevitably follows, creating a downward spiral of more and more wrongdoing. This lack of accountability sets a dangerous precedent, signaling to others that misconduct is tolerated, further eroding ethical standards. The absence of consequences for such leaders not only damages the morale of those committed to integrity, but also undermines the foundational values of the organization. As wrongdoing escalates unchecked, it leads to a deepening crisis of leadership and trust, jeopardizing the organization's stability and reputation. Governance. Weak internal controls, inadequate oversight mechanisms, and limited transparency in decision-making create vulnerabilities that the nefarious are quick to spot and exploit. Those vulnerabilities not only enable unethical behavior, but also discourage honest members from voicing concerns, thus perpetuating a deepening cycle of malpractice. Without robust checks and balances, organizations become susceptible to a culture of corruption where unethical actions go unchecked. Consequently, the integrity of the entire organization is compromised, leading to a loss of credibility and trust among stakeholders. Dysfunctional board. A dysfunctional board hinders effective oversight and fraud prevention by way of various overlapping factors. These include a lack of commitment, with members more focused on their CVs than their duties, and a fear of conflict leading to inaction despite clear evidence of wrongdoing. Additionally, avoidance of accountability and inattention to results prevent proper responsibility and assessment of outcomes. Furthermore, a lack of trust, especially in boards filled with Machiavellians, narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths, creates a toxic environment where honor is absent and individuals of integrity become targets. Politically captured board. If a board has been politically captured by those who have a toxic agenda, they will be so focused on their own political purposes that proper oversight will be impossible. In fact, such a captured board will actively resist proper oversight because such oversight will reveal that the organization is being used for purposes other than those legally acceptable. Untrained and incompetent boards. Recruitment by grace and favor, it's their turn, and other utterly inappropriate approaches can quickly create an untrained and incompetent board. The dysfunctional board then becomes self-perpetuating. Competent people of integrity are perceived as a potential threat and would never be recruited because they present a risk of exposing the incompetence. Corrupt board. In many of the corruption scandals over the last few years, the entire board and all of the senior management teams have been fully aware of their shared wrongdoing. Such widespread corruption gradually takes hold, using processes that I have documented elsewhere. Conflicted board. When a board has been derelict in its duties of oversight and a whistleblower has uncovered wrongdoing, what is the derelict board going to do? Are they going to thank the whistleblower for exposing their failures? Or are they going to turn on the whistleblower? Of course, the latter. Usually the process is to start investigations into the conduct of the whistleblower, where the terms of reference are written by the conflicted board to create the desired outcome. The witnesses are briefed on what to say to the independent investigator, who has, of course, been chosen by the conflicted board members. In the worst cases, the conflicted board that has rigged the outcome will themselves be witnesses, giving false testimony to the investigation that they have set up and are running in order to destroy the whistleblower. Incentives. Compensation systems that reward unethical behavior or prioritize short-term profits over ethical practices can actively incentivize misconduct. The adage, everyone has their price, is proven true when opportunities for wrongdoing are in plain sight and are openly rewarded. External factors. Industry norms. In industries with intense competition or a history of unethical practices, there may be less pressure to adhere to ethical standards. In fact, the pressure can euphemistically be expressed as cutting regulatory corners, which essentially means the rules don't apply to us. Regulatory deficit. Weak regulators, light touch regulators, a lack of enforcement, corruption, or apathy within the regulatory bodies can lead to an environment where organizational misconduct goes unchallenged and unchecked. Societal values. Societal norms that tolerate or even glorify wealth accumulation, regardless of how it's achieved, can contribute to a climate where ethical considerations are not a consideration. The factors that make wrongdoing possible often interact with and reinforce each other. For example, a culture that tolerates unethical behavior combined with weak internal controls, a lack of oversight, and an ineffective regulator creates a perfect breeding ground for wrongdoers to thrive. Combating fraud and corruption. Preventing organizational crime requires a multi-pronged approach that addresses individual motivations, strengthens organizational controls, builds a coherent and robust culture, and promotes ethical leadership by providing clear ethical guidelines, and establishes effective whistleblower protection mechanisms. Box-ticking fraud prevention. Many organizations claim to have appropriate anti-fraud and whistleblower protections in place, but in reality, what exists is merely box-ticking and virtue signaling. At the first sign of corruption being exposed by a whistleblower, wrongdoers often make false accusations, seeking to undermine the credibility and destroy the reputation of their exposer, the truth teller. What is missing to prevent fraud? Building a strong ethical foundation, having effective processes of oversight and scrutiny are essential to prevent and detect fraud and corruption within any organization. Until both the wrongdoers and those who fail in their duties of oversight are held personally liable, there is no possibility of a reduction in fraud or corruption. Until whistleblowers are protected from retaliation by both the wrongdoers and those who have failed to scrutinize effectively, most people will know the personal risk of speaking up is just too great. They will, therefore, opt for willful blindness to and silent complicity in the wrongdoing. The silent complicity emboldens the wrongdoers and enables more and worse fraud and corruption. Each act of silence deepens the spiral of silent complicity, which makes more serious wrongdoing much more likely. Takeaway. In the final analysis, the prevalence of fraud and corruption is due to the actions of multiple parties who either choose to do wrong, fail to do right, or remain silently complicit. Silence is the environment that fosters the growth of fraud and corruption. How widespread is this issue? The reality that most whistleblowers become unemployable is alarming. It suggests that those with the highest integrity who are capable of exposing wrongdoing are systematically excluded from positions where they could continue to do so. The reluctance of most employers to hire whistleblowers speaks volumes about the extent of fraud and corruption in society. It indicates a pervasive culture where exposing unethical practices is punished rather than rewarded, further perpetuating the cycle of fraud, corruption, and malpractice.